you are in Americas, as our today's precious teacher is Venerable Thubten Chödron. She is in America, in the US. It's just the morning, and I think in Europe around lunchtime. So wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and we hope you have and will have a wonderful day. It's the 5th day of the Days of Miracles, and we are so happy to have you with us. Second time today. We had already somebody in the meditation hall live, and now we are so very, very honored to have Venerable Thubten Chödron. She's speaking from her retreat cabin. So it's such a privilege, you know, to have somebody who is actually in retreat giving a teaching for us. Thank you so much, Venerable. And those of you who are not familiar with Venerable Thubten Chödron, just a very, very quick introduction so that we have the maximum time with her. So Venerable comes from the US and then met the Dharma. He was one of the hippies, I believe, right, Venerable, in the 70s.
Yes, in the 70s.
Yes. Met the Dharma in the 70s and then became ordained in 1977 and received the full ordination in 1986 and studied with many, many, many eminent teachers back then. And right now, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, of course, Serkan Senchab Rinpoche, and Kyabte Lama Zopa Rinpoche, our spiritual director, and so many other lamas. She is the founder of Shravasti Abbey, where she is right now. And we hope always that she tells us a little bit about it. And of course, has published many books and has edited many books, written many books with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And right now she just told me she's on another editing project in her retreat. So we are so very much honored, Venerable, that you're always so gracious to us and accept our invitations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Venerable Kong. And I appreciate being invited to give these talks. Yeah, I just hope somebody benefits from them, huh? Okay, so I always like to start things off with just breathing for a couple of minutes to clear the mind and let the mind settle down. So if you come back to your breath and just breathe normally and naturally and pay attention to the sensations as it goes in and out, let the mind calm down, and then we'll cultivate our motivation, and after that have the talk. Okay, so let's recall our motivation, and that we have a very long-term perspective. So we're not listening and participating, just so we can have a good time right now, but looking to future lives and especially looking to get out of samsara and to attain full awakening so we can help others get out of samsara. So to keep that long-term perspective in our mind, because it not only gives us a good motivation, but it helps to keep the mind stable. Whereas when we're only looking for the happiness of this life or our happiness right now, the mind goes up and down a lot. It's not so stable. So our common aim is full awakening. Our perspective is one of compassion and care for all sentient beings. And so with that, we'll share the Dharma. Okay, so come out of your meditation. Okay, so I forget the exact title of the talk, but it's something to do
Sorry,
with,
the camera is
oh,
out of focus and doesn't want to focus back. I'm just
we're trying to get everything focused here.
wow. I don't know why it's so
The
messed up.
the title has something to do with
How
the
to
relationship with
to
the
a spiritual
spiritual,
mentor.
how to relate to a spiritual mentor.
Yes, Venerable.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I knew it was something like that. Um, okay, so there's actually a lot to say on this topic, and I should probably preface it by saying that um, different people teach it in different ways. Yeah. And different people practice it in different ways. And so you may have heard the explanation from one viewpoint, from one teacher or one system, but there's other ways to do it. So we have to have a little bit of flexibility here. Yeah. Um, so I follow mostly His Holiness Dalai Lama and his perspective on the way he teaches about the relationship with the guru is to go gradually and not rush into things. Okay. And he always starts out by saying, our teacher is the Buddha. Okay. And from having the Buddha as our teacher, then, you know, the person who first teaches us about the four truths, that person is we see as a representative of the Buddha. Yeah, because they're teaching us true dukkha, in other words, true suffering, the true cause of it, true cessation, and true path. And they're the people who give us also the five lay precepts and monastic precepts. And so they act as a representative of the Buddha in teaching us all this. And this is really setting the foundation for our whole practice. Yeah, learning the four truths and, uh, really meditating on them and having some conviction and awareness. Yeah. And I say that because nowadays, people seem to go very quickly into Tantra and then often get very confused afterwards. Yeah. And yeah, so often the people, when they get confused, they call me for help. So I'm trying to, say things to prevent people from getting confused. Okay. Um, then the second level of guru, the one who the first level was the one who teaches us the Four Truths and then gives us the initial precepts. And then the second level is the person who teaches us the Bodhisattva path. Yeah. And so they teach us the different ways to generate bodhicitta, the 7 point of cause and effect, or equalizing and exchanging self for others. They teach us that. And then they give us the bodhisattva precepts. So that's upping it a little bit. Our commitment in the Dharma changes a bit, and we're taking on another set of precepts. And this time our motivation changes to one of really seeking full awakening. And so that teacher, okay, we see as an emanation of the Buddha. Okay, so the fundamental vehicle teacher, the one of the first level, we see as a representative of the Buddha. Then the Bodhisattva teacher, we see as, an emanation of the Buddha. Okay, so yeah. And then from there, yeah, when all of that, we have a good foundation and all of that, then we get to Tantra. Yeah. And that teacher gives us the empowerment and the different instructions on how to practice Tantra. And then that teacher, it's very often taught that you see that teacher as the Buddha, okay? And the reason for that is that when you do tantric practice, you're seeing all sentient beings as Buddhas, and you're seeing the environment as a pure land. In other words, you're practicing seeing things in this way. And so it wouldn't make much sense if you're seeing the environment as a pure land and all the sentient beings as manifestations of the Buddha, to then see your teacher as an ordinary being. That wouldn't make much sense. So that's when you see the teacher as a Buddha. Yeah. Now the confusion comes with that is when we hear, we think as the Buddha means is the Buddha. And often teachers teach it that way, that the Vajrayana teacher is the Buddha. But then for the Westerners, that gets quite confusing because, well, the Buddha is omniscient. So then that means our teacher is also omniscient. Yeah. And then, sometimes things happen and like, well, wait a minute, they're omniscient. How come they're acting like that? How come they're teaching that? Yeah. And it gets quite confusing for people. Also, people, it happened once here, that people expect, well, the teacher's omniscient, so you need to drive somewhere. Well, the teacher should just, they grew up in India, they're Tibetan, they're omniscient, so they should be able to tell you how to drive from here to New York or here to Seattle. They should know the directions. And then people are like, the teacher said they don't know the directions. Oh my goodness. I thought they were omniscient. Yeah. So that comes up. And then people also start to think, oh, that everything, every perspective that my teacher has, every opinion that my teacher has, must be the only correct one that's the same that the Buddha has. Okay, so to give you an example, I won't talk about the present US president, dear Donnie, But George Bush, the one who started the Iraq War, okay? So, um, yeah, so the Tibetans, thought George Bush was wonderful because he stood up for Tibet and he was, critical of human rights in China. Um, and so one of my teachers, one of my really precious teachers, who I'm very grateful to, when you talk to him about things, he voted for George Bush. He thought he was a great president, and was rooting for him. And then many of us disciples were looking and going, this president is awful. He started a war in a country and devastated that country. And was so useless. And then how could our teacher vote for, George Bush? And I thought he was the Buddha. He should know that George Bush was a horrible president. So, things like this get really confusing for people. Yeah. Um, so that's why I think it's very important to, when we're talking about how to relate to the teacher, that we came to study the Dharma. Okay. We didn't come to study, the maps of how to get from one place to the other. We didn't come to study politics. We didn't come to study gender relationships. We came to study the Dharma. Yeah. And so our teacher has different opinions about many of these secular topics than we do. That's okay. Yeah. But we're here to hear the teachings that the Buddha taught. Yeah. The other stuff is different. Uh, in the same way, some people think, well, my Tibetan teachers, they drink Tibetan tea, they love Tibetan tea. And if you're like me, I can't stand Tibetan tea. And it tastes awful. And it's full of, fat and salt. It's not very healthy. Now, does that mean that I don't have a good relationship with my teacher because I don't drink Tibetan tea and because I would really wish that he would stop drinking it because it's not healthy? Does that mean that like I have a horrible relationship and I'm not following my teacher properly? No, it doesn't mean that. It just means we have different opinions. Okay? Yeah. And I didn't come to study tea. I came to study the Dharma. So that's okay. We can have different opinions. Okay. So I think this is important, to be aware of. And also because many people tend to go to their teachers and with their daily life problems, it's like, oh, especially relationship problems. My boyfriend, my girlfriend, my husband, my wife, my kids, my parents. Oh, I have this problem, that problem. I have legal problems, I'm in debt and like, what do I do? Or I have a ticket, a traffic ticket, and I don't have the money to pay it. What do I do? And um, and they go to the lamas, to seek advice for this. Yeah. Well, do the lamas know about that? Yeah. Alex Burson, some of you may know him. He's a dear Dharma friend. And he was with Serkim Rinpoche, from the previous Serkim Rinpoche, for many, many years, and translating. And one day, Alex was living in Lower Dharamsala, and he was having some problems with his landlord. So he went to Rinpoche and told Rinpoche all about the problems with the landlord, and said, what do I do? And Rinpoche said, go ask a lawyer. Yeah. So again, we shouldn't expect our teachers to give us advice on these kinds of things. If you wanted to ask your teacher, what is the ultimate nature of the landlord? Or how does the landlord exist in conventional reality? Then he could answer that. Yeah. But if you ask him how to solve this problem, forget it, he doesn't know how to answer. Okay, so just some backlog because I run into this thing of people just going, ah, the guru is the Buddha, he knows everything. Ah, and it's not quite like that. And if you're with the Tibetans enough, they don't act like that. They're very polite in front of their teachers, but they're also truthful, and don't whitewash things. They cover things up, but they behind behind the cover, then they'll talk honestly. So, okay, so that's a little bit about the different types of teachers and a little bit about how to relate to them. But the real thing that you have to start out with is knowing what the qualities of a good teacher are. Okay. Because again, in the West, there's so much confusion about this. We think that anybody who has the title of being a teacher, well, they must be a Buddha. Yeah, because they're all Buddhas. No. Okay. And uh, His Holiness also comments that some people, when they're in the Tibetan community, they're just, an average monk or, an average person. But then if they get invited to the West, then they all of a sudden have so many titles. They become His Eminence, Lama, so-and-so, Rinpoche, Pelzangpo, the Enlightened One. And, that's not it. Yeah, and we shouldn't just look at titles because anybody can have titles and people give themselves titles. Okay. So we need to really know what are the qualities to look at. And so one of the things that is not a quality of a good teacher is charisma. Okay. Now I say that because we are very attracted to people who are charismatic, and they have a good personality and a good sense of humor, and the way they teach the Dharma is the way I like, and they give me presents and tell me I'm a good student and like that. So, we like those kind of teachers, but that's not always a good teacher. Okay. Being charismatic is not on the list. Okay. So when you talk about the first level of teaching, the one who teaches us, the four truths and gives us the 5 lay precepts or monastic precepts. Yeah, that person, good qualities. They need to know the Vinaya very well. Yeah, they need to keep the Vinaya. And the Vinaya is the monastic discipline, and the Vinaya is actually, it's more than the monastic discipline. You find so many of the teachings about karma that they're in the Vinaya. And even if you're not ordained, just the perspective of developing mindfulness and introspective awareness about our body, speech, and mind. Yeah. and being able to restrain ourselves from doing things that are negative, and to invigorate ourselves to commit, to get engaged in virtue. So, this kind of teacher who sets us on the path in this way is really precious, because they're helping us get a very good foundation, about this is the Buddhist worldview. Yeah. And really, to practice long term, we have to know the Buddhist worldview. Yeah. So we have to learn about rebirth. We have to learn about the mind and what's the nature of the mind, and how do you prove that rebirth exists, and what is karma, and how does karma function? How do you discern what is virtuous? How do you discern what is non-virtuous? How do you purify the non-virtue that you've created in the past? Yeah. And how do you really engage in virtue from now on? So, that teacher really, and this foundation, I really can't emphasize it enough. And I say this, I mean, I met the Dharma 50 years ago, when Lama and Rinpoche came to California, and this after 50 years of, being there, and this next year it'll be 40 years of ordination, then, this is what I've really come to really see how getting that foundation really sets the basis for everything else, and prevents having a lot of confusion later on. Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of qualities for that first level of teachers. So we have to kind of be around somebody, get to know them, see how they teach, what they teach, check and see if they have these qualities that are listed in the sutras and in the commentaries. Then for the second level teacher who teaches us the Bodhisattva path, yeah, then you want to really check, for example, their experience in the 3 higher trainings. So here it's ethical conduct, so same as the first level teacher, but here you add the ethical conduct of the Bodhisattva, which is, builds upon the ethical conduct of the 5 precepts and on monastic ordination. So that person has to have good ethical conduct with their precepts. They have to have some experience in meditation, and they have to have the correct view of emptiness. Yeah, because if they don't have the correct view of emptiness, boy, then we're going to get led down, the wrong path, and get really messed up. So, yeah, then we also need teachers who know more than us, that makes sense, and who have a good intention. Their motivation for teaching is virtuous. And again, this is so important, because nowadays, with the people who declare themselves as teachers, what is the motivation? Yeah. Because when you have the title teacher, then often you get a lot of respect, and people give you offerings. So you don't want that to, the person that we're trusting to lead us to full awakening. We don't want their motivation to be so that they get a lot of offerings from us or from anybody else. We don't want somebody whose motivation is to have a whole group of people following them following them around, praising them. Many good teachers have that, but that's not what they're looking for. That's not their motivation. Okay. And this is, for example, with the Dalai Lama, if get to know him, he just, well, even if you don't get to know him, what he says in the teachings, he says, I'm just an ordinary Buddhist monk. Yeah. He doesn't go around saying, I'm the Dalai Lama. This is my 14th incarnation. And they found me by doing this and that. And I'm certified. And I'm Chenrezig. They all think I'm Chenrezig. So see me that way. He doesn't do like that. Yeah. Yeah. The people who do like that, yeah. And then they always say, yeah, and here you can put your offerings here, and there's a nice big bowl for offerings. Those people I'm a little bit skeptical of. Not a little bit skeptical, very skeptical. Okay. Yeah, and so you want somebody whose motivation is they really want to help you as a student. Yeah, they really want to see you progress. They want you to be better than them. Good teachers want their students to be better than them. Yeah. So all your teachers should want that. And then also you want teachers who have a lot of patience and a lot of fortitude and who can be very forgiving, because we disciples sometimes are not so great. Yeah, we will get mad at our teachers, we will criticize them. We ask for their advice, and then we do the opposite, or we don't ask for their advice and just do what we want. And you know, and then we come back to the teacher and say, "Oh, please teach me the Dharma." And the teacher's going, "Well, I've been trying, but you're just doing your own trip." Yeah. So you want a teacher that is going to who's very compassionate, yeah, and who doesn't just get impatient when we disciples don't act so well and say, "Hey, go away, I'm done with you." But somebody who takes us back and continues to teach us according to our own receptivity. Okay. Then for the tantric teacher, yeah, again, it's not depending on titles. It's depending on, have they received the proper empowerment? Have they received the teachings? Do they understand them? Do they practice the Tantra? Do they have some experience with that? Yeah. Do they know there's a lot within Tantra, things that you have to learn, and about the body, about the mind, about the different rituals? Does this person know all of that? And again, do they keep, because when you take tantric empowerment, you receive a whole other set of another ethical code. And so you have more precepts, and you have, different things that you need, different commitments that you make. And so you want a teacher who knows what those are and who practices them themselves. Yeah. So that, they by their own practice, they can be a good role model. Yeah. So, and a short way of saying all this is, when you think of the kind of person that you want to be, why you are practicing the path, what your aim is, what your goal is, what kind of person do you want to be, then you want to seek teachers who are a good role model of becoming that kind of person. Okay. So I think most of us, we want we would like to be kind people. We would like to be truthful people. We would like to be wise people. Yeah, not caring about reputation, not caring about offerings. Yeah, but people who really care about others and can contribute something good to the world. Yeah. So we want teachers who embody that kind of quality and who um, you know we want to be people who don't lose our temper and yell and scream at people and accuse them of all sorts of things. Yeah. So we want teachers again who model that kind of behavior. And and so again, it's important to get to know different teachers and not just rush in and like, oh, everybody says that, oh, there's an empowerment. Let's go take an empowerment. I don't know. What's the teacher's name? Oh, well, that sounds good enough. I don't know anything about him. I want to take the empowerment. No, not like that. Okay. Yeah. But really, being there and seeing how they teach, what they teach, looking at the disciples. Yeah. Because if when you practice with a certain teacher, then you're going to be practicing with his or her other disciples. Yeah. So what are those disciples like? Yeah. And I asked that question because one time somebody came to me and they were studying with a teacher and and he said, oh, the teachings are very great. But then after the teachings, they all went to the pub together. I'm going, huh? Okay. Uh, this doesn't sound so great. You don't want to go out drinking with your teacher or even drinking. Sometimes it wasn't the teacher going, it was just the disciples. I mean, yeah, that's what everybody does. You listen to teachings. Yeah, you renew your precept and then you go drinking. Yeah, for me, I don't know about for you, but that's not a good role model for me. I had some other people come to me one time. They had been coming to to the group I was teaching. They were also going to another teacher, and they came to see me one time, and they said, "Oh, thank you. We really appreciate how you hold ethical discipline. We have this other teacher, and the teachings are great, but the other day." He was passed out on the sidewalk because he drank too much. Yeah. And they had to pick their teacher up from the sidewalk and so I'm sitting there going, and you're going back to that teacher? Yeah, well, yeah, they were, but but they appreciated what I was doing. But I know for me, a teacher who's passed out on the sidewalk, that's not the kind of role model I need. Yeah. So it's important to do that. Now, does that mean that you're never going to have a different opinion than your teacher? Yeah, that your teacher's always going to say everything you want to hear? No, it doesn't mean that. Okay? Because it and this depends a lot on what kind of relationship that you have with the teacher. Some teachers have thousands and thousands, 10,000, hundreds and thousands, of disciples. And so we're probably not going to have a personal relationship with that teacher because there's just too many disciples. You can't go talk to them, and ask them questions. They're your teacher because when there's a huge Dharma event, you go and you love the teachings and maybe you receive empowerments from them. But you're not going to be able to have a lot of personal contact with them. So some teachers, the relationship is like that, yeah, and you won't get personal advice. then other teachers, they don't have so many disciples. And those teachers have a lot more time. You can go and ask them questions and sit and drink tea together and talk and really discuss the Dharma with them. So and those teachers will get to know you much better on a personal level, and they will give you more personal advice because there's much more of a personal relationship. So with those teachers, they're liable even, and if it's a teacher that you live with, a whole group of people that you live with, then when things come up in your daily life, if they see you getting angry or being rude or something like that, being self-centered, they're likely to comment directly to you on it. Okay. Whereas the teacher who has thousands of disciples, you're not going to have that kind of relationship with. Okay. So it's possible to have more than one teacher. And this is, you usually have one who we call the root teacher. Often it's the person who first taught you the Dharma, but it doesn't have to be. It's the person whose teachings really touch your heart and energize you in the Dharma. So that teacher, then, you're going to want to have a more personal relationship with, where you can, check different things that are happening or ask for personal advice. Should I study that? Should I go here? Yeah. Do you think it's time for me to do to take the 5 precepts? Do you think it's time for me to take the Bodhisattva precepts? You can ask more personal questions like that. Yeah. So I think my own experience is I have both kinds of teachers, the ones that just have gazillions of disciples, but, I really treasure them. And then the ones that don't have so many disciples that I can go and talk to on a personal level. Okay. And so I find that that's quite helpful because I don't know about you, but I kind of need both types of relationships. Yeah. The teacher that we live with or live in their community, that teacher, look, put it this way, the teacher who we don't know so well, who has many disciples, whenever we're with that teacher, we are so polite. We make offerings, we bow, we watch what we say because they have many disciples. If we see them, individually, it's only for a few minutes. And we only see them when they're sitting on the Dharma throne. Yeah, we don't see them in daily life. Yeah. And so with those teachers, it's much easier to have a very pure view of them. And, they practice so well and they teach so well because that's the kind of relationship we have with them. That's the kind of environment that we see them in. Yeah. But with the teacher that we live with, they see us when we're in all different moods. Yeah. And we see them when they're in different moods too. Yeah. So it's that one. It sometimes is harder to have a really pure view of because, okay, the whole group maybe went out to a restaurant, let's say, and somebody's offering a meal to the whole group. And when the food comes, something is burnt. And your teacher says, please take this back. the food is a little bit burnt. It doesn't taste good. And they say that maybe in kind of a loud voice, and you not shouting and screaming, but they're very direct. I told you I wanted this kind of thing, and you brought this kind of thing, and you need to take it back. And we may go like, oh, look how they're talking to the poor person, they're being so rude. And they teach me to be patient, to not be attached to food. And here they are, they're telling they're sending the food back. Oh, how can my teacher, be like that? Well, so then we have to, when that kind of thing comes up, then we have to stop and say, instead of mind reading what we think is the teacher's motivation is, to instead ask ourselves, why does that bother me so much? Yeah. Why am I so judgmental of somebody who's acting like that? And all of a sudden, then it becomes a moment for us to learn about our own mind instead of what we usually do, which is projecting motivations on other people. So here it becomes, okay, gee, I'm kind of judgmental. I have a certain standard how I think people should act in restaurants, and he's not meeting that standard. Why do I get so angry about this? Yeah. Why do I think that this is such a big catastrophical thing that my teacher does this? Yeah, because it isn't a big thing, is it? Yeah, it's just my preconceptions, how I think people should act, and they're not doing that. Yeah. Are my preconceptions some standard of virtue? Yeah. Are my opinions the standard of virtue? Mm. Yeah. And then you have to see, this is really, this situation is saying more about me than it's saying about my teacher. Okay. Yeah. Whereas the teacher that we live with, yeah, when we're in a bad mood, when we're critical, when we're supposed to be doing something at a certain time and we don't show up, that teacher is going to call us on it. Yeah. If they think we can handle it. Okay. So this will also depend on what kind of disciple we are. If we're very fragile, they're not going to point anything out to us because they know that if they just even say, oh, you look angry, that we're going to get defensive and angry at them and like that. So they won't even say anything to us. Yeah. But the teachers who see that we're really practicing and that we're questioning our own thoughts, we're questioning our own interpretations, that teacher will point things out to us. Yeah. And sometimes they'll just say things in a very pleasant way. And sometimes they'll give you the look, like, hmm, hmm, yeah, what's going on with you today? Or they might even say to you, you were supposed to be here at such and such a time, and everybody was counting on you being there and doing this job, and you didn't show up. You need to be more responsible to the people around you, and remember that you're working for the benefit of others. And they'll say that quite directly to us. And then we go, oh, sometimes we go, oh, I'm getting criticized. Oh, how terrible I am. And we get all upset. Or we get angry. Why's my teacher talking to me like that? You know? Yeah, I didn't show up. I had a very good reason. And anyway, I don't like all these other people, the way they're working with me. I don't want to work with them anyway, so leave me alone. Okay? Um, so so dependent on how well the teacher knows us, they're going to respond to things in a different way. And very often the teacher who calls you on things, yeah, this is the one that you're really going to learn from. Yeah, because, and you often won't like it. Yeah, you want different answers, but you won't like what they say. But if you really use it in your practice, it can be very beneficial. I'll give you an example, okay, a personal example. So the lamas, way back in the 70s, sent me to work at a certain Dharma center. And we were all fairly new in the Dharma. And I was the SPC, the program coordinator. I was also the disciplinarian for the monks. And the monks gave me a really hard time. Yeah, they didn't want a woman, especially an American woman who happens to be independent, uh, to be the disciplinarian. So they gave me a really hard time. Yeah, they criticized me, they teased me, they made fun of me. Yeah. So when I finally got permission to leave that Dharma center, I went back to Kopan, and Rinpoche invited me for tea, to have a check-in. So I went and it's so beautiful and peaceful, and I'm having tea with my teacher. Oh, this is so wonderful, so different from being at that Dharma center where I was going crazy. And Rinpoche, there was especially one of the people there. We'll call him Sam. That isn't his real name, but we'll call him Sam. And Rinpoche, when we're sitting up there, so peaceful, having tea, Rinpoche says to me, "Who's kinder to you, the Buddha or Sam?" What kind of question is that? I'm thinking. I mean, the Buddha teaches me the Dharma, the kindness of the Buddha is amazing. Sam is not kind to me at all. Sam gives me a hard time and gets angry at me and criticizes me. So I very politely, because I'm with Rinpoche, I said, the Buddha's kinder to me than Sam. Rinpoche looks at me like, ah, you don't understand. And then he went on to tell me how Sam was kinder to me than the Buddha. What? And he explains because, Rinpoche knew that I was getting so angry when I was there. But he said, if you want to become a Buddha, you have to practice the Bodhisattva path. And one of the paramitas, one of the far-reaching attitudes, one of the perfections is the perfection of fortitude or patience, the ability to deal with things that you don't like and people getting angry, at you. And then Rinpoche said, And you can't practice fortitude with the Buddha because the Buddha is always kind. Yeah. But you need to practice fortitude. And so you need somebody to do that practice with. And that person's Sam. So that's why Sam is kinder to you than the Buddha. Yeah, you need Sam to practice the Bodhisattva perfections to become a Buddha. Well, I tell you, that was the last thing I wanted to hear and the last thing I expected to hear. I wanted Rinpoche to say, yeah, I know Sam very well. He's a difficult person. Many people have problems with him. Yeah, he really has a temper and he criticizes frequently. You did a very good job at the Dharma Center. I'm so sorry you had to work with him, but you did very well with coping with it. That's what I wanted to hear. I wanted some sympathy, with a little dash of praise, but that's not what Rinpoche told me. Yeah. So that was an incredible teaching for me. Yeah. Because when I went back and thought about it, yeah, if I, because he's teaching me the Dharma, Rinpoche, and like, yes, if I want to become a Buddha, and I know that practicing fortitude is important, and I sure was not practicing fortitude when I was at that Dharma center. I was practicing anger. Yeah. And so I need to work on my anger. It was a very good teaching. Yeah. So, you have to, uh, and in thinking back on it, I think, yeah, I mean, to me, that shows what his compassion and really wanting to help me. And it also, in a way, is a kind of compliment because he knew that I could handle it. He knew that I wouldn't kind of leave and say, oh, I poured my heart out, how miserable I was. And he didn't sympathize. He told me it was all my fault and that I need to practice better. Yeah, he knew I wouldn't react that way. So, so there was this space because he knew me well for him to give me that kind of feedback. Okay. So, yeah, just so that we're kind of prepared, for the different things that may come up. And we don't have some spectacular view of, that my teacher's going to agree with all my political opinions, because my political opinions are the right ones. And they're also going to agree with, how I think, what diet I think is healthy. Because again, what I think is always the best one. No, not to expect that. And not to expect that they're always going to be nice and praise me and say what I want and smile. Um, you know, but they also will talk to us quite frankly and give us instructions. Yeah. Uh, Now, like I said before, some people go and ask personal questions to their teachers. Uh, and so to really pause and ask yourself, do I want an answer to this question? Okay. I'll give you a very extreme example of this. Yeah. I was in Malaysia and one woman came to see me. Um, I didn't know her, because I was just teaching there a few days. And she came to see me and she said, I've been dating this one guy for a long time, and I don't know whether I should marry him. What do you think? Should I marry this man? And I'm going like, how in the world should I know? I have, and she continued before I said anything. She said, well, I talked to this Lama and he said, yes, I should marry that guy. And then I talked to the next Lama who came. I asked him and he said, no, I shouldn't. So what do you think? And it's like, I have no idea. Who you marry is your business. Yeah. And actually, as a monastic, I'm not supposed to get involved in that. We actually have a precept against, matchmaking and this kind of stuff. But like, how did she expect me to know that? But of course, I didn't know her, so I was quite, I was very gentle, and I said, I have no idea. What do you think? Do you care about him? How, when you have different opinions, how do you work them out? You need to think about things. You have the same philosophy about money, so think about things well. And then I'm sure you are an intelligent person. You can figure out for yourself whether you want to marry him. Okay. So, yeah, because the idea is that we want to really respect our teacher, and if we respect our teacher and they give us certain advice, then the general thought is we should follow that advice. Yeah. But then you have people who, maybe this goes next week when I talk about the disciples. Um, but you have people who go around and they ask for personal advice, like this woman was doing, from every single teacher. Yeah. Do I marry him? Do I not marry him? Marry him? Do I not? And you get different advice from everybody. And then you get super confused. And then at the end, you realize, oh, that first advice that the first teacher gave me, which was not what I wanted to hear, actually was the best advice. Yeah. And uh, and then you have to stop and ask, oh, why am I going around and asking all these different teachers? Oh, it's because I know what the answer that I want to hear. Yeah. And I'm looking for somebody else to approve of it. Yeah. I'm looking for approval. I'm looking for reassurance that what I'm thinking or what I'm doing is what I want to do is good. Well, again, if you know what you want to do, then why are you going around asking many people? It's good to ask, one of your teachers for some feedback. And this is on personal topics, yeah? And if they don't say what you want them to say, it gets very confusing when you start then going to 5 or 10 other teachers and asking them the same question, and you get different answers. Okay, because you're just going to get really confused. I know somebody who did this and asked one person, should I ordain? And that teacher said yes. And then the other teacher said, no, you have some things you need to work on first. And then the third teacher said, yes, but first you need to do these things. And then every teacher gave a different answer. And the person then basically did what he wanted. Yeah. But then why did you spend so much time going asking other people if you knew what you wanted? Yeah. So when you ask your teacher personal questions, you have to have, some openness to take in the answer. Yeah. And if it isn't what the answer you wanted, then, to pause and like, okay, why am I asking them if I already have the answer to myself? Yeah. Okay. So that's one thing. But on Dharma questions, on Dharma viewpoints, there, I think it can be very helpful to ask different teachers the same question. Yeah, because when you discuss the Dharma, there's many different perspectives on things, many different ways to look at a certain point. And sometimes, getting a variety of ideas can be very helpful. Now, that doesn't mean that one day you ask your Buddhist teacher, and then the next day you go to a Hindu teacher, and the next day you go to a Christian teacher, and the next day you go to that you're asking teachers from all sorts of different traditions, because you'll get very confused with that. But for example, if you're studying about karma, if you're studying about emptiness, if you're studying, any of the just the basic teachings, different teachers will teach them in different ways. And so it can be very interesting to ask them their different ideas on things, especially about emptiness. And, how do you identify the object of negation? What is the self that we're trying to see does not exist? And different teachers will kind of give you different hints about that and describe it in a different way. And that can be really helpful. Yeah. Or sometimes, how in the tradition there's so much debate. And even within the different monasteries, the different yikcha, the main teachers that they rely on in the scriptures, the yikcha from those principal teachers, they'll have different views. And it can, the Tibetans themselves get into, these incredible debates about different things. And it's very helpful for making the mind more flexible and giving you many different perspectives so that you go back, and then when you meditate, you have much more to contemplate, much more to meditate on. So that's very, very helpful. Okay. Yeah. What I didn't get to, is how do we behave with our teachers from our side? Okay. So, we should respect them. Yeah. Because they know more than us. And so this, can be challenging because sometimes we think, I know this, I know that. And, oh, oh, when one of the teachers I studied with, who I love dearly and who helped me so much, he's no longer alive, but when we went to study with him, at Nalanda, he thought the world was flat because that's what it says, what Vasubandhu said in the Abhidharma Kosha. The world is flat and Mount Meru's in the center, and you have the four continents, just like in the mandala offering. And, and so one day, one of the nuns in our group took a globe with her and went to see Genla. And Genla had said, because he was going through the Abhidharma Kosha, and they'll tell you the location of the hell realms. It's so many paksei below Bodh Gaya. Paksei is a unit of measurement. Okay. And so he had given, and the world is flat. So, you go straight down below Bodh Gaya, such and such a distance, and that's where you will find the hell realms. Well, she did all the math for how many paksei is how many miles, and she calculated it from Bodh Gaya, with the globe, you go straight down and you wind up in, lo and behold, California. And, um, and get Rinpoche just say, oh, no, that's not possible. It's, this is Vasubandhu said this. Here's where the hell realms are. And she said, no, the world is round and, it's different. So the saving factor was that His Holiness Dalai Lama in one teaching talked about how we have to listen to science, and if science can prove something that contradicts what the Buddha said, then we have to go with what can be proven. And so, yes, the world is round. That was the saving grace. Yeah, I think I don't know in the end what Ken Rinpoche thought, but yeah, he listened and he took it in, and he had a flexible mind. But then we had to have flexible minds too. It's like, well, he learned Vasubandhu, was a holy being, and everything Vasubandhu said was fantastic. And this is, and when you think from the centuries when Vasubandhu lived, everybody, even in the West, everybody thought the world was flat. Yeah. So it's not so outrageous. Uh, but okay, we can just accept different viewpoints on this. And but I think he came to, around to see our point at one point or another. Yeah. So you can still have respect for your teacher, even though, there may be things like this that come up. And I think another thing is to really have gratitude. Yeah. We, especially as foreigners, we tend to take things for granted. Yeah. And it's like, okay, somebody's a teacher. We come to things like consumers. Yeah. Okay, I'm here. The teacher is like the store, and I'm the consumer. And, I'm coming, it's your duty to teach me the Dharma. And if I like it, then I'll give you something. If I don't like it, I won't give you something. We come with this consumer mentality. And that's not the mentality that is being open-minded, and that's not the way to relate to the teachers. Yeah. But instead to really see that, I mean, what they're giving us, they're showing us the solution to all of our misery. Yeah. They're showing us how to get out of samsara. And even our parents who have been kind to us, they can't teach us how to get out of samsara. Yeah, even your husbands and wives and your best friends and everybody else, none of those people can teach us how to get out of samsara. Yeah. But here's somebody who knows, and they can teach me, and they can show me the path and what I need to practice. And so, that person's really precious to me. Yeah, they show me a kindness that nobody else can. And so, of course, when you see that, then automatically there's a feeling of gratitude. Yeah, because what you're receiving from them is not just what nobody else can give you, but it's the solution to, you know, to all your inner turmoil. Okay. And so that's quite precious. And so because of that, having gratitude and because of the teacher's knowledge, having respect for them and an admiration for what they know, and then, being open to listen to it. Okay. So I think I've talked enough, huh? Maybe we have a few minutes, Venerable Kunpen, for questions, if people have questions.
Oh, there's Ismail. Can you just unmute yourself?
Sure. Amitabha. Amitabha, Venerable Children. My name is Ismail. I have a question, please. As a spiritual mentor in the West, what changes did you notice that occurred internally within you and your supporters to seed and root your spiritual vow and mission here in the United States? Amitabha.
What changes? Changes in what?
That's really, I guess, the focus of the question. What changes did you notice that shifted from you and being in a humble shelter, just cultivating by yourself, growing your own food, and then shifting you to really being whatever you wanted to be beyond that?
Okay. Well, first of all, I didn't just live in a humble. The places I lived in India were not high class. That's true. But I didn't grow my own food, and I wasn't meditating all day.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, this is our dream image. Yeah. You ordain. And then, I mean, I had this dream image too. Everybody in my cohort. The Dharma is wonderful. We love it. We're going to go find a cave and sit and meditate and attain full enlightenment in this lifetime. We're gonna do that. Well, our teacher had other ideas for us. Yeah. And he sent us out to work in Dharma centers. Yeah. He sent us out to transcribe teachings, to edit teachings, to publish teachings. He sent us out to dig ditches and to do manual work in the Dharma centers. It wasn't just this, when you read the story of the ancients, that, yes, I'm going to be Milarepa like that. No. First of all, because we don't necessarily have the merit to be able to do that. Okay. So, but now to get to your question, the changes. Okay, well, one of the changes is, first of all, how I teach people about the relationship with the spiritual mentor. Yeah. It's quite different. It's different than even how my teacher teaches it. Yeah, some of you have heard from Rinpoche how he teaches the subject. How I teach the subject is quite different because I, was following His Holiness the Dalai Lama's perspective, because I found that perspective, very, very grounded, very, very helpful in the West, much, very realistic. So I do that in a different way. in how I keep some of the precepts, yeah, in some way here at the Abbey, we keep some of the precepts in a way that is stricter than how the Tibetans do it, and in some of the precepts, because we follow the Chinese Vinaya, because that enabled the nuns to have the full ordination, which we couldn't get in the Tibetan lineage. But in some ways, we are a little bit more, you could say, liberal than what is actually said in the Vinaya, because the Vinaya was, when the Buddha set down the Vinaya precepts, it was a certain culture at a certain time period. Okay, for example, I mean, the Buddha lived 25 centuries ago. Did they have digital things then? No, you know. So there's nothing in, for example, the monastic vows or in the lay precepts about how you deal with digital things, about a phone and being online and going in social media and all of this stuff, which is so important to people now. Yeah. So there's no precepts about that because they didn't have it. Yeah. So then what we have to do in the West is, think, well, first we have to learn how the Buddha approached different things. Yeah. And then extrapolate from there. If the Buddha were alive today, what kind of precepts or guidance would the Buddha have for Dharma practitioners about going online and about digital devices? Yeah. And so we have to think about that and kind of develop it ourselves. Yeah. And so, so there's those kinds of things where you have to be creative. I mean, for example, one of our monastic precepts is not to ride in vehicles. Yeah. At the Buddha's time, there were not cars and trucks and airplanes and things like that. But how can, and in the Buddhist time, you rode on vehicles that the vehicles were either ox carts, meaning that an animal was having to exert the energy to pull you along, or there was a human being on a rickshaw that was exerting their energy to pull you along, And in the Buddhist time, because so much emphasis was put on non-harmfulness, which is a very basic thing. So you had to think about that. But you also had to think, at the Buddhist time, who did ride in vehicles? Well, it was the kings. Yeah, it was the upper class. And so riding in a vehicle was a sign of being an important person. Okay. But nowadays, all of us ride in vehicles, don't we? Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't be where we are right now if we had never ridden in a car or a plane or whatever. Okay. So, and then what about digital things? So, we have to think we have to ride in cars. Yeah. But we're not going to look for the people who have rich cars and ride and very expensive cars. We're not going to look to ride with those people. And if the monastery has a car, we're not going to get a BMW, because that just wouldn't be appropriate for monastics. Okay, but we need to ride in vehicles. Yeah, but also at our monastery, for example, people don't have private cars because we don't want people, if you have your own car, well, you know how it is in the West. You want something from the supermarket, you just get in the car and you drive and get what you want and bring it back. And so it's easy to fulfill all your desires. If it's a monastery car, it doesn't belong to you personally. You can't do that. Oh, I really feel like eating ice cream right now. You can't just jump in the car and go get some, okay? Because it's not your car, and the monastery isn't going to let you go out and just fulfill all your wants, okay? Um, so, things like that, And regarding being online, then, different groups and different people are going to have different views of that. If you're a lay person and you're working in a job, certain jobs require that you have a phone, and actually doing most things in conventional society, you need phones. Yeah. Well, personally speaking, I'm probably the only person in the world who does not have a phone, my own hand phone, and I don't want one because I think people are addicted to, their phones. And so at our monastery, and this is, a rule here just that applies to us. It doesn't apply to everybody, and it doesn't apply to the lay people who come here, but just in terms of the monastics, none of us have our own individual phones. Yeah. But we do use computers. Yeah. But we try, we don't want to be online all the time. We only go online when we need it for the work we're doing, or if there's a Dharma question we need to look up. Yeah, but we're not, and to have a reasonable, awareness of what's happening in society. But we don't have to be online all the time and know everything, and we don't check. None of us have our own Facebook accounts or these kinds of things. So, you have to adjust it to the culture that you're living in. Yeah. And even if you're a layperson, I think you need to, really look at how you're using the internet and how do you look at your phone first thing in the morning, last thing at night? If you roll over in the middle of the night, do you look at the phone? If you do, yeah, there's an attachment problem there. Yeah. And how is that affecting your mind? Are you learning to think for yourself and to think clearly? Or are you just, following the latest thing on who's saying what about who? Okay. So, yeah, so we have to think in this kind of perspective as we're bringing Buddhism to the West. Yeah.
Thank you
That
so
was
much,
kind of a long
Amituofo.
answer, but
It was perfect. Thank you.
okay. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, then we'll dedicate the merit. Okay, so we'll do a chant in English to dedicate it. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Venerable Thubten Chödron. For
Thank
your
you
precious
again.
teachings, down to earth teachings. Wonderful. Thank you so, so much.